Hello folks, Brew here, and this is the last match of the RPTQ prep test series that I have been pulling out for a while, and that is again Dredge on the left side, but John on the right side of your screen. And necessary disclaimer here, basically the John deck is not super up to date, and for this reason you have to be aware that there are so many things that John could have done better in this matchup in terms of the build and configuration. So this is why I want to warn you right from the start that I'm planning to replay this matchup with more up-to-date John build, but this is just what is expected to happen, or how things will line up if you would have a kind of older version of John. So yeah, anyways, not to spoil anything, you'll see it for yourself. The games will be still quite interesting, because it will be either way or another. Also, somehow, a lot of the time I get super lucky with Dredge and etc. But bear with me, I would want to explain to you what could have happened differently and what John or Dredge could have done differently. But yeah, mulligan to 6, and again, very weird hand. So this basically signifies that you gotta pile shuffle with John. You just have to. I mean, it mulligans more or less well, because it's not really dependent on a package of cards. It's just all the individual cards are good on their own, so that's the strength of John. There's an archetype, but yeah, the variance is there. Dredge though still mulligans relatively well, because you don't need sometimes a lot of guess in hand. You're just relying on good flips from the Dredge. Yeah, you're just figuring out like who's gonna start, and yeah, Dredge starts with a neonate, and well, there is no reason to really wait until end of turn of the opponent, so I'm dredging this loam right away. Flip the conflagrate the troll, and I think that's another neonate, but still a troll is there. Conflagrate there to clear up I don't know, some annoying lilies or bobs and tarmos, stuff like that. Fetch and the pass, which is not exciting, but basically John's mulled to 5, I think, even though on the draw, but still. John really needs a lot of cards to, beat Dredge in game 1. It really does need a lot of resources. So the troll dredges me up, I think, another dredger, an amalgam, and that's basically it as far as relevant cards are concerned. I think there is an Synquid Imp in there too, a second conflagrate as well. But what I wanted to see was blood guests and more amalgams and some narcomoebas to trigger amalgams. Didn't really see that. Good part about this matchup is that your cathartic reunion is bound to actually happen. But I think what I did was just to cast a loam here so that I would have more dredgers going, and I guess I wanted another land for flashbacking the looting, but I don't think I have binned any. When I was flickering through my hand, you could never notice that there were, I think, a couple of narcomoebas. That is not something that I would really enjoy to have in my hand. So yeah, reunion would have been just way too good here, I guess. Instead I just cast loam. That was unexciting, but I think that if John doesn't have insane hand, then it might even come down to hard cast Golgari Grave Trolls, for example. But stuff like Lily or 2 drops here are not that important because I have Conflagrate, but if he snaps a window to resolve Scavenging Ooze on 3 mana with 1 green up, he can, you know, eat the Conflagrate, but now I have 2, so that plan goes away, so that's not a viable strategy anymore. Just a tap tomb, that's just, I feel so bad as a Dredge here, cause, yeah, the giant draws are not really lining up that well. Dredge and a troll here, I think. Dredge another troll among things. What else I can distinguish here? There is a Tech Edge, there is an axe, and there is a Narcomoeba. So there is an Amalgam trigger. That's still not very exciting, but it's turn 3. I think I would have really loved to see a loot in here, but I don't think I have. But between life and 2 Conflagrates in the bin and some trolls in hand and more lands, I don't know, I don't really need to go completely bananas here, plus John is not really casting anything or doing anything, so there is that. There is that. So bolting Narcomoeba is not a great thing to do, and bolting Amalgam is not that exciting either, unless he can just eat it with an Ooze in the same turn, but I don't think that's gonna happen. Thinking one led to play here because it might go down to hard casting Grave Trolls, and yeah, he goes for Bolt and Amalgam, I guess, because right now I don't have ways to bring it back, but of course I can dredge something, but anyways, it's saving more life than bolting a pesky Narcomoeba. Land number 3 to fetch, he goes to cast a Bob here. Yeah, whatever. It's not really gonna do anything because of Conflagrate. Dredge and a troll for some ghast and amoebas. I get a ghast and amoeba, so I get to trigger the Amalgam. I can technically Conflagrate here, you know, like cast a Loam, get more lands, play land number 4, flash Conflagrates. Why not? Might as well, just to make sure he doesn't draw any action here. Even though he can't really block the amoebas. What's that? Oh, flashback looting, yeah. Okay, so that maybe I can, you know, bin more Bloodghasts and stuff. Well, I get another Narcomoeba. Yeah. Dredge Loam. I think I dredged 2 Loams or something. Or it was Imp and the Loam. Well, we'll see. Okay, play lands. There's a Bloodghast. Yeah, I'm in no rush to actually Conflagrate here because I might as well better, you know, have more power on board. But I don't think he could have interacted really well with 2 Conflagrates there, so there is a chance I should have just gone for 2 turns of flashback and Conflagrate just to make sure that he has no way to actually get out of this. But this also helps. Although I would probably should gone for Conflagrate if I would known for sure that this build of Jund is up to date, but it isn't. That means I don't have to play around main deck Anger of the Gods, which is a huge deal. I don't think I would have gone so wide and overextend so much if I would have known that for sure that this Jund is a haterator kind of version. On the other hand, the builds that do play at main deck have like 2, and I would still have available double conflagrate if I would want to, but I think it's still probably much safer. Would have been much safer just to go to loam and conflagrate this turn and the next one. I don't even know what he can do here. No sweepers or anything. Inquisition doesn't really do anything. He can discard a loam or something, but that doesn't really do it. Whatever. Yeah, tell him that he needs to discard this loam, but I have 2 in hand, and that just doesn't do anything. Because next turn I attack with the guys, he blocks, let's say, 1 amalgam, he still takes in 5, goes to 11. Well, that's not exactly lethal, true that, but I can, you know, maybe conflagrate before combat so that he can't block amalgam, but he's bound to have some Terminator bolts for this amalgam, I suppose. Because he knows about the conflagrate in my being from the start of the game, basically. Yeah, it would have been much safer just to go life conf. Because now I cannot even, you know, represent lethal. Don't have enough. Either way. Well, makes sense too. Okay, yeah, dredge this loam. Just for future. Cast one of them. Well, maybe fetch first, so that I can make sure that I take all the lands with the loams and that I actually have something to fetch. This version had a basic forest in it, so there are more things to fetch, although the one I actually played at the RPTQ has pretty much the same amount of fetchable lands, actually even one more, because the one I have here has only 1 blood crypt and 1 cliffs, but I replaced the cliffs with a 2nd crypt, and then that forest became steam vents, so yeah, I have 1 more nowadays. I suppose the basic forest is just for the blood moons, but I'm just not a fan of blood moon against Dredge, really. I mean, you cut off just very few cards. It's just kind of marginal to me. I mean, it could happen and could actually matter so that I can, let's say, in a long drawn out game, hard cast Grave Trolls, but whatever. Okay, Terminate happens on the amalgam. Then he can block a Bloodghast, for example. No, what was it? Oh yeah, because I'm killing a Bob, or yeah. Killing a Bob with Conflagrate. Yeah, and that's not lethal. And then now, if he has an Ooze, he can maybe exile the 2nd Conflagrate. But no, he doesn't even have an Ooze. Something like Bolt, Ooze, Basic would have helped. Say, he gets to board in some goodies out of the sideboard to Damnation, but then Pyroclasm is definitely way worse than Anger in this matchup. Knights of Soul Betrayal, I think, is there mostly for Infector Affinity, but it's quite okay in this matchup as well. Just so that you don't randomly die to all those 1 toughness guys, even though there are still those amalgams, but whatevs. You'll take what you take. See, he basically casts Demonic Consultation on me so that I tell him what to bring in. Oh yeah, well, the sweepers basically, Brutality is okay, but not super exciting. Olivia is cool in a drawn out game if he manages to stall it somehow, but yeah, too much fairness in the sideboard, way too much fairness. thinks is something, but not really gonna help much. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So Olivia, Levemancer, um, Domination, Pyroclasm, Explosives. So his Cybert is definitely much better against Infect, for example, or some Burner Zoo decks, but really not handling Dredge that well. Almost zero grave hate, which is really strange. Nowadays, Jant will be packing a bunch of ley lines and stuff like that, and maybe something else. But you know, if Dredge doesn't have really good flips from the Dredges in the early couple sets, and then Jant can, you know, um, go Inquisition into Reunion or something, and then throw in some cheap removals, and then basically it can seal the game with Scourginus or Calatus. But because I expect that, because I'm bringing in extra removal, like extra axes, some people argue that Brutality is fine in this matchup. I don't know, it's quite okay. At the RPTQ opted for a Golgari Charm as a one-off instead of a 4th Nature's Claim. It's, I think, particularly good in this matchup. It protects against anger, kills the ley line, and it can be still used in some combo aggro matchups like Infect or Affinity, for example, to nuke on their 1/1s, even though it nukes your stuff, but you don't really mind that too much, and you can play around that. Yeah, I really like Golgari Charm, but it's not gonna be featured really here because this is basically almost Matikuisma's list, if not his World Magic Cup list, but at least his list from Opens and VMCQs, more or less. So here I have Ghost Quarters and Bazooka Box, which will be actually replaced with online lines at the actual tournament. Here there is a DK as well, which is not that bad, but I didn't include it in my Cybert at the end after these test sessions because, well, I was trying to gun against all the ley lines and try to have as many answers to that as possible. Even though DK helps against a range of frats, and not just hate cards, but just frats. So that's a positive side about it, and then it can be countered. So let's say a blue deck will have some form of grave hate, but then have a counter backup for Rest in Peace or something. And let's say, yeah, Brutality was just a flexible card, but Thought says the good part about having Thoughtseize in the Cyber is that you can get rid of a relevant Ravenous Trap or Surgical extraction out of their hand sometimes, and then proceed, but then you can't really prevent a broken extraction, but I guess you can prevent an annoying Ravenous Trap out of nowhere. But problem is it's a discard spell, so it's sorcery speed, and then if you're like dredging instead of your draw at the draw step, and then they trap, so what you can do about this? Not really that much. So you just have to start over. But let's say you have 3 mana or 2 mana, and you have a looting or a reunion, and you have a Thoughtseize. So I think it's a like nice kind of an insurance policy. Or they have a Reap in hand that they just cannot like play yet, or do not want to play yet. So yeah, for example, if you're on the play, let's say you somehow lost game 1, for example, that can happen, and then you go turn 1 something, and then they're like land, and you have a looting, and then you can go Thoughtseize, get rid of the Reap, and then proceed with looting. I feel like that's kind of sweet. And then against blue decks, Footseas just guarantees you in a cheaply tempo manner to get rid of a counter spell for a reunion or something. So also this turn 1, turn 2 kind of thing to play around Spell Snare or Spell Pierce and stuff like this. So yeah, basically Brutality over Footseas, it's a metagame call. And I didn't have much information and didn't have good guesses what decks to expect at RPTQ, so I went with a more flexible package. So Ravine, and I go Cleaves into looting. Pitch in Amalgam and an Imp. Things are going pretty well so far. There's very little things I should be worried about with this configuration of Jand. So I should only worry about Ooze and Kalitas, and that's basically it. Nothing else. Everything else doesn't really matter that much. Well, Quick Tarmo could be an issue, but it's not gonna be quick enough. And then because he's a rock deck, so he can't like dispel or pierce lightning X on the Tarmogoyf or something. Yeah, I almost drew for the turn. Kinda spaced out. Okay, first Imp, hit an Amalgam, and nothing else that matters. Well, turn 3 I could be flashback in that looting, but not now, and this is why I played a Singleton Simian Spirit Guide in my deck at the regional, because that enables turn 2 flashback looting, stuff like this. Or if you don't have a land and stuff and so on, you could go reunion and so on. So as a one-off, I actually quite liked it, but it never really mattered for me at that tournament, but it could have easily. It was in a flexible slot for the main deck, which could have been like a Dark Blast main deck, or 4-Flume, or a Singleton Dark Lightning X in main, things like that. And yeah, people should look more into the heavier blue splash for Dredge, with the blue-red fast lands and more steam vents, and then easy charms and counter spells in the sideboard like Pierce, Dispel, stuff like that. I think it's pretty interesting. Lightning Axe, discard an Imp to kill the Bob so that he doesn't draw into any real action. Well, I could have flashback to looting here, it seems. I don't know why I didn't do that. That's kinda weird. I guess because I didn't have dredgers in the bin, so that's why. Right. He played another Bob and no third land, so that's a big bummer. Because then he could have maybe, you know, played a discard spell or bolt onto one of my guys. Dredge and the Imp. I think I didn't hit any dredgers, but there's another looting in the bin, I think. But flashback in that is not good right now because, again, I have no dredgers, so that's a bit of a problem. I could have easily just attacked, hardcast Imp, and be done. I don't think his draws are even capable of beating that. Okay, flashback in this looting, just to discard the dredgers for next turn. That's a fine line, I guess, while he's mana screwed heavily. Yeah, he's taking some damage and sent to take more from the Bob, like from the upkeep trigger. He forgot to reveal, but yeah. It's easy now to see on the tape what did he draw, but he's supposed to draw one more card. Or was it Scavenging Ooze? Oh, sorry, that's not a Bob, it's Scavenging Ooze. The lights were not amazing, indeed. But I think later that day we actually fixed it, kinda. And plus in post-production I think it should look much better. It's just that while I'm commenting, I'm not 100% sure about everything. Yeah, so he it's what? It's the troll. Okay, but he's only on one green. That's quite a bummer. He could have, mouse from pulse to amalgams, but that's not really a great play, I think. If he would have had double green here, it would be pretty nasty, I guess. Okay, Dredge and Imp hitting Troll Imp live from below and another Troll in the conflagrate. That's kinda funny. So yeah, he basically scoops it up because he's not beating this really in that kind of fashion. With these draws, I'm just soon gonna hardcast Trolls and he would need removal for them all the time. So yeah, we're siding out here. If he would have had like 4 ley lines plus extra anger or something, or like Ragdos Charm or Junt Charm, I guess Junt is now playing Ragdos Charm in the sideboard over the Junt one, simply because it does remove a graveyard. It costs 2 mana instead of 3, so it could be more timely in terms of actually removing the graveyard. And then even though it doesn't clean the creatures on board, but coupled with some attacks and some bolts, Junt might actually, burn down the face of your Dredge opponent with Ragdos Charm, because normally Dredge would have like 6 bodies or something on board if the grave is not really hated out. Here I had 1 axe main and 2 side, but at the regional I had only 2 axes in a sideboard and non-main, because they're good, but they're generally just for the Kalitz's Ooze kind of thing. And then I brought in the 3 claims, so siding out with that configuration as if he actually had leylines or something, but he didn't really have anything. So, but I would have felt really cheated if I would board differently. So I would feel like I just pre-boarded or something like this if I would have boarded the way that, as if I knew that he didn't have ley lines or anything for that matter. Well, Claim could have killed like explosives, but that's not amazing. But yeah, normally I would have boarded in 3 claims, 2 axes, Golgari Charm, maybe 1 or 2 Collective Brutality, I'm not sure. Something like that. If I would have had the Flotsys instead of Collective Brutality, I think it's pretty much 100% that I would board it in. Oh yeah, I was supposed to board in Decay. I think I brought it in, but I'm not sure. Maybe I just didn't have much space and I didn't feel like I needed it, but of course, if you have Decays in the sideboard, it's fine to bring them in. And it wouldn't hurt to board in like a 1 Ghost Quarter or something, and Bajoku if you had them in the sideboard. This is what I wanted to have. Anyways, see you next time, folks. Thanks for watching. Bye.